So I am glad you could join me today for this update on the class progress. And this should be fairly quick, but I did get a chance to look at the portfolio subject selections and some really good, intriguing choices this time around. By the way, are you seeing my slides? Just to make sure that the right thing is displayed. Okay. Some interesting choices this time. Yours, it was interesting to see because when we were talking before about transmedia, I had pictured you approaching it as one of the kind of the transmedia marketing firms that work with other companies to promote their movies or games or other products. But you have something of your own transmedia story or transmedia experience that you're creating that you want to share with sort of an audience out there. Is that right? Oh, okay, so kind of the other way around. Yeah, because you were focusing really heavily on and I'm trying to think of the name right now. Yeah, Campfire was the one I had in mind as an example. But there are certainly others out there going all the way back to, I think one of the first was the We Heart Bees or I Heart Bees campaign with Bungie and the Halo games. But okay, yeah, so either way you want to approach it will be fine. If you want to work with your own transmedia story and experience, or if you want to take it as more of the transmedia marketing service, whichever direction you want to go with that for your portfolio purposes is fine. And I haven't heard of Starlight Runner before, but they do work in a similar vein of Campfire. Oh, okay. So they're doing work with. I see. So video game and comic book adaptations for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Tom Clancy stuff. Very cool. That's a really interesting and exciting field. I have never been on the ball enough to participate in any of the ongoing transmedia games, like the alternate reality games that have been out there, but I've kept up with them kind of in more of an armchair fashion. I really enjoy that. I love the fact that that all exists is great. Did you have any questions about the portfolio subject or any feedback that I gave? I don't know that I gave anything that would have been too challenging, but if there was anything that wasn't quite clear. Okay, yeah. And okay, so yeah, and to be clear, there will certainly be projects that are prescribed, like you will be doing a video project or and developing a style guide and that sort of thing. But there's enough flexibility to adapt that to what you want to focus on. And the goal is to, with the MCBS portfolio, is first of all to kind of showcase the skills that you're gaining through the coursework. um, from our perspective as the faculty, that's the goal of this portfolio, is to demonstrate what you're learning. And then from your perspective, it's to showcase what you're capable of doing. So hopefully we can cover both of those things at once. I also wanted to emphasize that the MCBS portfolio doesn't have to be the extent of your professional portfolio. So if you're working on things outside of school, as you're picking up new skills, or as you're things that you're already doing, and also if you have work in your classes that outside of portfolio classes that you're proud of, then you can also include that, because you want to make a good showpiece, make a good showcase of your skills. So this week, our focus is on the actually no this on the target audience for your portfolio subject. And this is, we're really only looking at sort of the basic factors with the audience, but determining your target audience is actually a fairly complex topic, more than just making sort of an educated guess of who's watching, who this might appeal to. You can really get into a lot of in-depth research with this, which you may do later on, because you do have a research class coming down the pipe. But for now, I really want you to start thinking about who your subject appeals to, who are they trying to reach with the services and the products that they provide. So in this case, it's your services or your product. So if you were taking, for example, if you were going to go with more of the transmedia marketing firm approach, then your audience would really ultimately be kind of twofold. You would have your potential customers or clients, which would be the people that are looking to you to market their content, and then you would have the viewing audience, those people that are participating in your transmedia experience. So it's really two different sets of people potentially. And it's important because each of those groups will have different characteristics, different motivations, and reasons for being involved with your subject. If, on the other hand, you are doing the transmedia story, your own transmedia world that you had in mind, then you might consider who would most be interested in that type of story and experience, who that would really appeal to, if it's a younger audience or an older audience, or if it's if more of kind of the geek culture crowd, which it sounded like that might be more in that vein. So things to consider. Some of the basic factors to look at are geography is a big one. If it's something that's online, which I think many of this class's subjects do take an online format, then it might be nationwide or even worldwide. But if it's something like a local business or a local performer, then it'll be easier to define the geographic limits, which can in turn narrow down who your audience demographics are. The relevant demographics really depends on the nature of your subject. So it's kind of determined on a case-by-case basis if something that would appeal to more to men than to women, or vice versa, if there's specific ethnicity or age range, um, income level, and even family and marital status. These are possible factors, but that doesn't mean they're always factors. Some of them just won't be relevant at times for a particular subject. So it's something to really critically consider whether those are relevant to your particular subject. If maybe it's something that would only appeal to people of a particular profession or people involved in a particular hobby, then that would narrow it down quite a bit. For our purposes in this class, I'm really kind of letting you determine these factors based on your own estimation. This is sort of an educated guess or estimation of who this audience is, because for the most part, you all know your subject pretty well, especially in your case, since it's one that you're creating. You know it pretty intimately, so you have an idea of who you're trying to appeal to, who you're trying to target with the subject that you're creating. But if you wanted to be more empirical about it, there are resources you could turn to. You can look at things like the Pew Pew Studies, PEW. They're an organization that does media research, and each year they do release their statistics on usage of. Now lately they've been doing social media usage with breakdown of who's using which social media outlet in terms of age, gender, you name it. Pretty detailed analysis. Also, the Nielsen that do the Nielsen ratings do a lot of reports on different genres of TV and music and other forms of media. So these are places you can look, and I will actually send out links to those two that I've mentioned. These are two that you can look to if your subject deals with a specific type of media, like a particular genre of music, or if you are heavily focused on a particular social media outlet or something along those lines. In terms of geographic location, you can look at census data. And in fact, I'm always hesitant to recommend Wikipedia as a source because it is not a valid academic source. But if you look up cities or neighborhoods or subdivisions, you can usually find the census data, and they'll break it down by income and ethnicities and age ranges that live in that area. Like I've looked up Winter Park, Florida, where Full Sail is located, and you can get a pretty good breakdown, and it's updated based on U.S. Census data. So if you wanted to go to the primary source, you could easily do that as well. Don't know if those are particularly relevant to your transmedia project, but these are sources that are available out there. And oftentimes just some effective Googling can turn up a lot of interesting information. Some other factors that we're looking at with the target audience are how they communicate. Where are they going for information? And this is important because this is how they might find you if they're looking for whatever product or service that your subject has to offer. Like they might turn to Yelp, or they might turn to some other online review source, or come across an article about a transmedia marketing campaign and get an idea from that. So knowing where your audience is going for information helps you to meet them where they're already at, if you can get your message out there in that same fashion. And points 3 and 4 go hand in hand. So what is your customer looking for? What do they need? Or what do they want? And how does your subject fulfill that need? It could simply be the desire for entertainment, to be amused or distracted from the day-to-day world, a form of escape, which often games and kind of the transmedia alternate worlds have to offer. So really take this seriously, and that's directed at the class as a whole, and try not to just give too broad and general an answer to this. I will sometimes see responses that say, the audience is every adult in the United States between the ages of 18 and 99, or something that's just kind of just grossly general in its scope. And it's probably, if you give that kind of answer, you're probably going to be wrong, because there's very little that appeals to, both an 18-year-old male and a 70-year-old woman. It's really hard to, come up with something that is of interest to that wide an audience. Think about who your core audience is. Did you have any thoughts or questions about anything I've said so far? Okay, yeah, and it can be tough to know for sure who's going to be drawn to what you're doing. And this is where you might do a little bit of research. So go out and look for similar efforts that have been done in the past, and look who has responded to those. Whether it's actual transmedia experiences or the subjects that those transmedia experiences have dealt with. So like the one I mentioned earlier, I Heart Bees, was really there to get the interest in, I think it was the Halo game, the first Halo game, right before it was released. So then by extension, you might look at, okay, who is Halo marketed to? Who is, its chief intended audience? And so, using that as a model, then you might consider your own transmedia story and think of what are some similar experiences, and who are they appealing to. Sometimes you can Google those particular intellectual properties and find out who their target audience is. But even just looking at some of the community that forms around some of these things, just thinking of, let me think, there was some that I've been following before, like there was one called Marble Hornets that was online, that was sort of a very kind of horror-oriented transmedia story that was taking place, but you could look at who's interacting with some of these things through social media and get an idea of the age range and personalities that way as well. Okay, yeah, and you were saying how where you lived and you grew up has influenced your perceptions about some of these factors as well. And so that's really a matter of taking a step back from your own viewpoints and looking at it in a more objective manner, which is challenging for anyone to do. But looking at the statistics, if they're available, can give you a clearer view of that, and just really looking at what's happening out in the world and collecting the information. And I'm not sure I'm understanding the comment about militarism. How is that? How do you connect that with your target audience and your subject? Oh, okay. I see. And actually, that's an important point for your particular target audience, since that's something that you are specifically. That's a theme that maybe you specifically call attention to in your transmedia story, because I know it's one of the themes in your story is about sort of friendship and having this group of people that are kind of very tight knit, um, and also that it sounded like there were themes of sort of a lot of travel and kind of being relocated, which I know as an Air Force brat myself, that's sort of a common experience of the challenge of holding on to friends when there's no telling when you might be moved. Um, so so yeah, so that you right there, you've identified one of the key factors of your target audience. Yeah, yeah. It's I think I was lucky that I didn't have to move very much while my dad was in the service. But I know a lot of my friends, would kind of they would come and go, and it was not a lot of permanence. So that's actually a really great example of how specialized your audience factors can be, because that's not something that would typically um, be involved in a lot of different portfolio subjects, but because of the nature of your particular case, that is something that becomes very relevant. Yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea of what you're saying and how that applies to what I know about your transmedia story. And just to give some context, defining your target audience becomes really important um, as any media project develops, because it really can determine both the type of media that you make use of, because certain audiences are naturally gravitate towards certain media outlets. Um, you start hearing things like different social medias are favored by the younger crowd versus the older crowd. I think of my mother, who is still afraid of computers and still has a landline telephone, versus everybody else in my life who are made the change. So it certainly has an impact on the types of media that you choose, because you want to use those that reach your audience. And yours is a special case because yours is transmedia, so it's using multiple formats at once. Also, knowing your target audience will help you to craft your message and your voice, the way you speak within your media. As you can think about, I sometimes think about commercials for like children's toys, and they always use this very over the top, exciting tones of voice. Whereas if thinking in comparison to oops, things like the Sarah McLachlan ASPCA commercial, where it's more appealing to emotions and trying to kind of tug at the heartstrings. So knowing your audience will inform you of what kind of voice you want to use. Okay. Do you feel like you have some idea? I mean, beyond some of the factors we've discussed, do you feel like you have some idea of where your target audience is coming from? And were there any other questions? just realized I had my mic muted while I was talking, but I was saying that it's good you have that kind of core audience in mind. And I was also saying that when you do the write-up for the assignment, to go ahead and provide some background on how you arrived at that group, like how you concluded that this was the audience, based on the nature of your subject, which you in the comment you just posted in the chat kind of gives some idea of that. So that's really good. Okay, and yeah, it definitely sounds like you are on the right track with what you're giving me in this chat area. So for the assignment this week, revisit that and expand on that a little bit. Give some comment on how the nature of that story connects with that particular audience, which I can definitely see the connection there. But again, anytime you're writing up your portfolio stuff, assume that whoever is reading it, which is probably going to be me, doesn't really have any background. So you want to make sure that it's explained clear enough to where somebody could just pick this up and read it and get an idea of what you're talking about. So that's where we're at. Did you have any other questions or concerns about where we're at right now? Okay, then I'm happy to go ahead and conclude for the evening. I do appreciate you joining me tonight and throughout the month so far. But if you should think of any questions or anything that you're not sure about, let me know, and I'll be happy to clear it up.